I want to move on and talk about the biggest question mark for Michigan this spring, which is the quarterback spot. You have a bunch of guys. Jack Tuttle got a 7th year of eligibility. Alex Orji's there. So Jack Tuttle's 24, and he will be suiting up.
Dr. Tuttle.
Yeah, exactly. I know he could be working on a PhD or whatever he wants at this point. He has Big Ten starting experience. You have a bunch of other guys who don't have starting experience at all in college football. I think a lot of people are eyeing the April transfer portal period for Michigan. But when I look back at it last year, I mean, some of the high-profile guys to move around in April, unless I'm missing some guys, were Peyton Thorne going from Michigan State to Auburn. Tyler Buckner was one of those guys, and he didn't pan out, and now he's playing lacrosse.
Yep.
What do you expect? And every year is different, right? Because there are changes in college football, and I want to ask you about some of those in a little bit. But, what are you expecting out of the quarterbacks that are going to be available in April?
Well, the thing is, the quarterback that would go to Michigan has not revealed himself yet.
Right.
It's because here's the thing. The starting job at Michigan is good enough that someone would leave another starting job for it.
True.
So I don't want to get Ballas mad at me, but probably a tamper a little bit. There's a little light tampering and figure out who might be interested in that job and put the feelers out. Or
they may put feelers out to you.
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That goes both ways. And so the people who will be sort of the middlemen in all this, especially with quarterbacks, your private quarterback trainers are the ones that usually get reached out to. And they kind of figure out between themselves and the school and the player, if this could happen, this can get done. But Michigan is one of the most attractive places to go because you look at the level of talent that's around you and the kind of defense that's going to play on the other side of the ball. So you're going to step into a situation that's good. So that's the part that's interesting to me. I was talking to Pete Nakos, our national writer at On3, and Alabama's in a situation where they're going to be nervous in the spring window. The SEC schools, remember, aren't as nervous usually because they have a rule that says you can't go from one SEC school to another in the spring window and then play that season. Well, most guys in the SEC want to play in the SEC, but Michigan's the type of destination that they would go to. And so if you're Alabama, and I realize Alabama just got Keon Sabb from Michigan, but I think you'd be pretty nervous if Michigan ID'd one of your backups or somebody who maybe hasn't been a starter yet, but was kind of ascendant. You'd be nervous about that because they might want to go play there. And as far as the quarterback situation goes, I'm trying to think of a really good quarterback who has moved in the spring window. I don't know that there has been. I mean, the two best players that have moved in the spring window the last 2 years have been receivers. Last year it was Keon Coleman leaving Michigan State and going to Florida State.
The JMO.
And yeah.
Maybe that was before there was a window, maybe. But.
That was before the windows, though, because Jameson Williams might have moved when, in the winter at that point as well. But, it's hard for a quarterback to come in with no spring practice and just take over. The Orji thing's interesting to me because I remember talking to all the Michigan players going into the Rose Bowl and the national championship game, and to a man, they say he's the best athlete on the team.
Yeah.
So can you build an offense around the best athlete we haven't seen him throw in a game, but you guys have seen him throw at practice. You guys have seen him throw. If he's an adequate passer, there's an offense to be built that could be very good with Alex Orji running it. So it just depends on how you feel about that. It depends on how you feel about him as a thrower, if you can build an offense around him. But I don't worry about him as a runner. I don't worry about him as an athlete because some very good athletes have said he's a better athlete than me.
It's true. And if you look at the roster and there might be one other position group that's either weaker or lacking experience, it's wide receiver. So maybe he is the guy to go with because you have that running element with him where you build a different type of offense, which is something I'm most interested in. He can throw. It's not like he can't throw. We've seen him in spring games. He had a few nice throws last year, spring game. Seen him in practice. It's hard to tell in the the period that they give us to show us in practice at these bowl games. But no, definitely. And I think people are holding their breath at Michigan because they got through largely unscathed in the transfer portal period after Jim Harbaugh left. But they know that they're going to lose guys in April. Every team probably is.
Can you imagine how many of those defensive guys are getting tampered with right now? Like it's insane because they have some guys that would start for every team in the country that everybody's going to want. So, but the thing is, I also think Michigan developed a pretty nice model for retaining guys in terms of NIL. They did a good job with it last year. They've probably evolved it some this year and understand what you got to do. Now that, some of it with college football is the ebbs and flows of your team being old this year and being young this year. Like Ohio State's going to be the old team in 2024, like Michigan was in 2023. That's just how it went. But, I think Michigan can get older. And the other thing I want to see Sharon Moore, I imagine he's going to be as active in the spring portal as Harbaugh was the past 2 years. I mean, that Michigan's been better at finding guys who can come in and start at a later date than a lot of other people.
Right. And that's going to be important. It's important to note too, because it goes both ways. You don't just lose guys. And I don't think we even have to imagine at how much some of these guys are getting tampered with, because it has happened, from what we've heard. And I think that what Michigan has done now has bought itself time to get to April, where now you can go through spring ball. These guys know what to expect under Sharon Moore, and you can, make sure that you have NIL in place for the guys to stay. That bought you a few months on that front. They end April 20th. We could see a lot of activity in the 10 days after the spring game until that portal closes. But like you said, we'll see it both ways. You could get a guy in June like Michigan did with Josh Wallace last year, and he ends up being a huge addition on the team. So,
they've been great at that. They really have, and it's interesting, to be able to have 3 offensive line starters in the past 2 seasons who were very important players. 2 centers and a left tackle. That's not easy to do. It's hard to find impact offensive linemen in the portal, and Oluwatimi, Drake Nugent, Ladarius Henderson, all really important players at Michigan.
No doubt. And they brought in a couple or one this year. You still have Miles Hinton sitting there. So, I mean, there still is some experience, and they have more work to do in April.